On this episode of the Divination for Liberation podcast, you're already doing more with less. You're already surviving on the bare minimum. You're already rationing. Health insurance costs have exploded. The cost of groceries has exploded. And you think the revolution is you tightening your belt and only eating beans? That's what you think the revolution is? No, the revolution is realizing that the more that you are entitled to is in the pockets of Donald Trump. It's in the pockets of Lockheed Martin. It's in the pockets of Elon Musk and Larry Ellison. It's in the pockets of the CEOs who are running the studios in Hollywood. It is in the pockets of the presidents and vice presidents of the record industries that ate up all of the smaller labels. It is in the pockets of the CEOs of the grocery stores who keep raising the prices on the food. The more that you are entitled to, somebody else already has it. And the solution is not for you to do more with less. The solution is for you to go take it. The Divination for Liberation podcast is completely listener funded. Each month, listeners like you give to make sure that this self-produced, edited, and distributed podcast continues to show up in your podcast and YouTube feeds. Join the Divination for Liberation community today to become one in that number. Your support keeps this podcast rolling and gives you access to a community of liberation-minded seekers, exclusive lives, and other content like horoscopes, courses, and a monthly meetup. The next meetup is August 12th. See you then. Hi, I'm Dana, and I'm here with your divination for the full moon in Sidereal Capricorn. The 2026 Sidereal Astrology Guide says, realizing the tension between caretaking and being taken care of.
Break down. If you can't hold it, let it hold you. Let it carry you. When you've done all that you know.
I want to start off this episode with questions. These are questions for you, questions for me, questions to reflect on, questions to meditate on, questions to journal on. I have had some of these questions written for months. So I've started using my copy of the guide as a way for me to take notes in preparation for the podcast episodes. And for a lot of reasons, I've been looking forward to this full moon in Capricorn and the following lunation, which will be a new moon solar eclipse in sidereal Cancer. So let's look at these questions. How much do you weigh emotionally? Do you feel yourself as heavy and burdensome to others in an emotional way? Where did that story come from? Where did you begin to learn how much you weigh emotionally? Or are you oblivious to how much you weigh emotionally? Is that something that you don't pay attention to? You don't think of, oh my God, I have these feelings. Where am I going to put them? Who's going to hold them? Who's going to listen? Who's going to support? Who's going to hold me while I hold all of these feelings? Are they going to say it's too much? Am I going to feel like I'm burdened and smushing and smothering someone else with my feelings? How does that show up in your life and relationships? This is the personal place from which this full moon in sidereal Capricorn has us oriented. Sidereal Capricorn, where the full moon is, and then a sun conjunct Jupiter in sidereal Cancer is on the other end of that. So a full moon is when the sun and moon are in opposing signs. This time, it just so happens to be that Jupiter is in sidereal Cancer. And if we go back to June in the 2026 Sidereal Astrology Guide, we'll know that Jupiter in Cancer says attuning to my body and emotions to understand. So if we even combine that with this full moon, realizing the tension between caretaking and being taken care of, how are you attuning to your body and your emotions to understand how much you weigh emotionally? Is that something that you should be concerned with? Right? On a grander, larger societal global scale, transits through sidereal Capricorn and Cancer, right? Which is what this full moon is, which is what the impending eclipse series, which will begin at the new moon on August 12th. This is what that's about. It's about caretaking. And on a collective scale, this is about the economy. What is an economy but a way for a group of people to value, meaning to decide how much is worth or decide how much things are worth, how much water is worth, how much changing babies' diapers is worth, how much sweeping school hallways is worth, how much birthing children is worth, how much chopping wood is worth. What is an economy but deciding how different forms of caretaking are valued, and then describing how care is distributed? It is so important that we begin to speak about the economy in these terms. The economy is not the stock market. The economy is not the IPO valuation of Tesla and SpaceX. The economy is the labor that you and I do, regardless of if it's paid or not. The economy is not determined only by things you get a W 2 for, a 1099 for. The economy is not determined by money. Money is just a way that we determine the value of different forms of care. In a capitalist economy that is situated inside white supremacy, racism, and imperialism, we assume that certain forms of labor, certain forms of care are more valuable than others. Some deserve to be rewarded or valued with lots of currency, and some you should just do out of the kindness of your heart. Now, I know this is threads trying to start some stuff, and this is why I don't respond to those posts. But I repeatedly see these conversations where people say that people who do work like I do, I'm a diviner, I'm a spiritualist, I am clergy to some people, I am a pattern maker, a meaning maker. I am a person that people look to make sense of what's going on in their world and in their lives. People like me should not charge for our work. That I should somehow be fed by manna on heaven. My rent should be paid, you know, by the sincerity of my heart or something like that. Right? It's no coincidence to me that my work as a spiritualist, as a diviner, as a teacher is work that most people observe women doing. Most people observe women reading tarot cards and reading birth charts now, right? Most people perceive women doing spiritual work, root work, and hoodoo. There are men and gender nonconforming people, but I'm not lost on the fact that capitalism indoctrinates all of us that work or labor or care where women are the primary ones seen doing it or actually doing it should not be paid. If we are realizing the tension between caretaking and being taken care of, should not all labor be used to take care of yourself? Meaning, shouldn't there be some type of exchange where you do labor, you change a diaper, you sweep the hallway at the school, you cook the meals for the elderly, you care for your elderly grandparent or grandmother, you cook meals for your children, you build homes, you check people out at the grocery store, you pick strawberries, you know, All of this is form of care. And this eclipse is really setting us up for a cultural and economic revolution, which is already occurring. A lot of people ask me, well, when is the collapse going to happen? And when is this going to happen? And when is this change going to happen? And there is never a moment where suddenly we are in one state of living our day-to-day lives, and then now we're in another state. There's not a revolution and now a revolution, right? Think of it more as in waves and ebbs and flows. One of the things that I want to point out is that this full moon is ruled by or answering to Saturn in sidereal Pisces. Saturn has been in sidereal Pisces since March 31st, 2025. We are connecting the dots that shape reality. We're not calculating it, we're not putting it in a spreadsheet, we are not, measuring it, we're not quantifying it. We are connecting the dots that shape reality, which means we are observing what is reinforced by patterns, not what is explicitly expressed through data and words. And as we move through this 2.5 year transit of Saturn in sidereal Pisces, we are going to meet up with ways that the narrative, the story, the words that are being used, the news media that is talking about the thing is going to conflict with the pattern that we're observing. We're going to be bombarded with more and more information, thinking that somehow the external information, the words that are being used to name an experience that we're having, should somehow override the pattern that we're observing. This particular full moon is really honing in on what are the patterns you have been observing about care and caretaking, not just in your personal life and in your relationships, but in a society as a whole. Today, July 27th, the day that I'm recording this podcast, Zohran Mamdani announced that in the city-run grocery stores, staple items like dairy and meat and produce will be sold at a 30% discount. This is as close to socialism as we have ever been since the New Deal, where the state is explicitly using the taxpayer money that the citizens of New York pay to actually take care of them. This is all that socialism is. Socialism is skip all of the academic big words, proletariat, bourgeoisie, all of that. Skip all of that. Socialism is you and your labor and your money takes care of you and you and you. Right now, you and your labor and your money is taking care of the CEO of the company you work for. You, your labor, and your money is padding the pockets of the elected representatives who are supposed to represent your interest. Instead, they are representing the interest of Israel, which is really just a cover for the military industrial complex in America. If you want to know why Israel, you want to know why APAC and all of the other organizations who are lobbying for Israel that we don't necessarily know the names of, it is because at the end of the day, money to quote Israel is money to Lockheed Martin. It is money to the bomb makers, the plane makers, the bullet makers, the gun makers, the drone makers, the surveillance software makers, Palantir, Flock. All of these companies are taking your care and your labor. So if you like a economic system where your labor, the work that you do, whether it is paid or not, determines your worth and your value. It determines whether or not you're housed, whether or not you have enough to eat, whether or not you have access to healthcare, then you love capitalism. If you think that changing diapers is less worthy than getting on a social media app and spewing out Nazi propaganda, then you like capitalism. However, if you would like to live in the world where your labor and your efforts are what produce the care you need to survive, then you like socialism. That's really what it boils down to. At the end of the day, as we're realizing the tension between caretaking and being taken care of, we are slowly awakening to the fact that we are doing more care than we are receiving. Now, of course, in our personal lives, your mileage may vary. And I don't necessarily think that this always falls around gender lines. So let's set that to the side. When I asked at the opening of this episode, do how much do you weigh emotionally? This is a really tricky question because I think that this is something that is nuanced. It is something that changes over time and in context. When you are a baby, you have no awareness how much you weigh emotionally. You don't realize or have the capacity to care that your cry is keeping the neighbor awake. You have no capacity to realize that your primary caregiver hasn't bathed in 3 days because you still don't sleep through the night and you are cluster feeding, right? You are permanently attached to the boob and can't function without it. As a baby, you have no awareness for how much you weigh emotionally, for how much effort, labor, or resources are required to respond to your distress and meet your needs. That's the way it's supposed to be. But see, when too early in your life, you are made aware of how much you weigh emotionally, it disrupts your capacity to be entitled to emotional care and protection. How many of you are adults who now don't feel entitled to emotional care and protection? How many of you only feel your hunger or sadness or pain when it's already a full blown illness, when it's already burnout, when it's already depression, right? That is for us who have been made to be concerned with how much we weigh emotionally. And the reality, right? The dots we're connecting to understand reality at this point is that capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, imperialism, these are all systems of dominance. All of these systems unequally distribute the labor of caretaking, unequally and unjustly value the labor of caretaking, right? One of my teachings and one of my sayings that I particularly associate with the moon is that capitalism is why you hate your mother. Capitalism linked up with patriarchy and racism, right? Linked up with imperialism is why a single adult is burdened with the responsibility to care for a child. Meaning that single adult isn't the load isn't being spread. The emotional, the physical, the material, all being put on one person, right? And how does a person respond in those circumstances? What sidereal Capricorn, where this full moon is, teaches us is that parenting and caretaking is the capacity to disregard your own emotional needs and distress so that you can be attentive to the distress of another. I'm going to repeat that. In Divination for Liberation Sidereal Astrology, Sidereal Capricorn teaches us that caretaking means having the capacity to disregard your own emotional and physical distress in order to be attentive to and responsive to another. What does that mean? If you have sidereal Capricorn placements, that's what it was like for you. You didn't necessarily have the space to pay attention to your own needs and emotions as an invitation for a caregiver to respond. Instead, you had to pay attention to your caregiver's emotional needs so that you could respond to theirs. And then maybe then there will be enough left for you. Sidereal Capricorn also teaches us about resourcefulness and rationing. Rationing means recognizing the limitation of the resources that are available and figuring out how to use it in an economical way so that we don't run out. That is why at this full moon, rationing is a term that we need to become very familiar with. Because as we move through the next 18 to 24 months with eclipses in Sidereal Capricorn and Cancer, that word rationing is going to come up over and over again. Right now, it's already coming up rationing water. Right now, it's already coming up rationing electricity as these heat domes and climate change induced climate disasters are having us crank our ACs up and putting pressure on the power grid as AI data centers are eating and eating and eating and eating up the electricity that we have available, drinking up all the water we have available, as AI data centers are taking up the land, right? Rationing as oil is burning in Saudi Arabia, rationing as in the United States military weapons stockpile is depleted because it has given weapons to Ukraine, it has been supporting Israel, and it's entered this dumb war in Iran. Rationing means how do I soberly assess what it is that I have to make sure that I don't use it all up, to make sure that I have enough. That is why the ideal of sidereal Capricorn is to have enough. And to have enough means you can't use it all up. But we are on the verge of using up a whole lot of stuff. I won't list that again. On the other side of that, we have sidereal Cancer, which is this sign that is increasingly the focus of all of the astrology for a while, right? We'll peak around, let's say, spring between, yeah, probably spring 2027, November, October 2026. Excuse me, we get these peaks probably again in July, August of 2027, these peaks of activity in sidereal Cancer. Already, you should be seeing connections in your own life between now and August of 2019. Think back to August of 2019, maybe late July. You should already be seeing connections between what was happening in your life then and what is happening in your life now. And it should be in these sidereal Cancer themes. If you have your Divination for Liberation sidereal birth chart, or you have the 2026 sidereal astrology guide, and you've used this table in here that helps you calculate where each sign is in your birth chart, right? Then the house topics in that first row, based on your rising sign for Cancer, should already be resurfacing themes or connecting back to things that were happening August 2019. Sidereal Cancer is always talking about being fussed over. In my client work right now, one of the analogies that I'm enjoying using to talk about sidereal Cancer, particularly for people who don't have any sidereal Cancer in their birth charts, but for everybody else too, is that sidereal Cancer is like the princess and the pea. They stacking up mattress on mattress on mattress on mattress. Trying and the princess is like, this is not comfortable. Like, my neck and my back. Like, what is going on? Someone help. Right? And meanwhile, it's this pea down under the bottom mattress. And the princess feels it. She's like, this is flaring up my sciatica. Okay, I got scoliosis. I can't, right? But this is Cancer. Cancer is fussing over every emotional and physical discomfort. They are sensitive to their distress. In a lot of ways, sidereal Cancer has the freedom to pay attention to their own feelings and their own needs in a way that often draws the attention of other people to their feelings and needs for good or ill. So if you have sidereal Cancer placements in your birth chart, it's very likely that you experience that kind of attentiveness to your feelings and needs for good or ill. Right? Because sometimes the fussing over is too much. Sometimes the fussing over is handicapping you. It's preventing you from learning what you're capable of. It's preventing you from having the capacity to take risks. It's preventing you from being more independent and going off on your own. Sometimes sidereal Cancer is representing physical and emotional limitations, right? Like our depression, ADHD, borderline personality, anxiety, or ways that we have not physiologically developed. And it leaves us in these states of dependence. But sometimes it's like, okay, yeah, I need you to push me around in a wheelchair, but that don't mean that you got to treat me like I'm five, like I'm grown, right? So these are the conundrums that we're dealing with at a full moon where we're realizing the tension between being taken care of and caretaking. One more note that I wrote here is this way that capitalism already has a set value system. And if we, in our physical capacity, if we, in our cognitive or neurological capacities, don't fit into the value system of capitalism, we spend a lot of time advocating for capitalism to value the thing that inherently threatens it. There are forms of labor that are inherently threatening to capitalism, right? Communal caretaking, mutual aid, right? A lot of times people are coming to me about career stuff and, you know, they're trying to figure out how to forge a career path in this thing that comes natural to them, that they feel a passion and calling for. But somehow capitalism just doesn't value it. Capitalism does not value art. It does not value creativity unless it is serving the accumulation and hoarding of resources for a very few. Which is why we see things like the consolidation of the industry of music over the course of, the last quarter of the 20th century. We see the consolidation of all of the small labels, Chess and, Blue Note and Motown. They all become subsidiaries of these larger conglomerates. Why? Because music and art in a fascist capitalist society is meant to preserve the existing power structure and status quo. And anytime art, which in a lot of ways inherently becomes anti fascist, inherently becomes anti imperial, when people are creating from a space of authenticity in their own experience, instead of trying to perform for corporations so that they can be validated and paid for it, right? There's so many things that capitalism not value. Because if capitalism values it, capitalism doesn't exist anymore. So I just want to say to a lot of people, I know this covers a lot of people, especially right now with everything that's going on. Capitalism not valuing what you know, capitalism not employing you and paying you for what you are good at is not a statement about your worth. It is not a statement about your calling, and it is not a statement about your value. In fact, it should be the thing that radicalizes you. If you are an artist and you cannot live from your art should be radicalizing you. If you are a thinker and a writer and you cannot live from your thinking and your writing, that should radicalize you. Radicalize you in this sense means it should make you question everything and make you not stop questioning until you live from that art, until you live from that thing that you feel called to do. And maybe everybody won't live from their art or that thing that they're called to do. But at the very least, you should not be humiliated just to pay your rent. You should not be humiliated just to eat. You should be able to receive care and maintain your dignity. When you give your labor, when you work, you should be the primary recipient of your care and your labor and your work. When you exchange your time, your physical energy, your mental effort for money, that money, those caretaking tokens, you should be the primary recipient of that care. And if you're not, we got some work to do. Let's pull some cards.
Rest your aching heart in my hands. Ride this wave of grief where it lands. Lay your softness right here.
It's time for Advice from the People's Oracle. This week, we have Rebecca writing in from New York City. Rebecca says, I am navigating new motherhood and seeking advice on how to navigate my career. I am wondering if I need to pivot my theater directing career to provide more for my child or to continue on my path. Well, congratulations on new motherhood. I hope you are being gracious and kind to yourself in this fourth trimester. It's going to take a lot longer than most of us go into it thinking for our bodies to recover and for this new version of ourself to emerge. And that is in line with a lot of what I see going on in your chart, Rebecca. You have in your sidereal birth chart 0 water signs occupied. That means you have no Pisces, you have no Cancer placements, and you have no Scorpio. Often, when we are completely missing what is called a tool in Divination for Liberation Sidereal Astrology, it means that there is another tool that is taking over the chart. In this case, I would describe your chart as water deficient or completely absent of water and air dominant. Your air dominance features several placements in Sidereal Gemini and Libra. This is really important for a couple of reasons. One, motherhood has a way of pulling you into your body and making you really become very aware of what you may have been treated like when you were as helpless as the baby you just gave birth to now is. For many new mothers, those first months and years of motherhood are times where we have really big aha moments about what our parents might have been going through, what our mother might have been going through, and also what it means to be responsible for a human that is completely helpless and dependent on you. This is also at the same time that your body is going through a lot of changes. When you have no water in your birth chart, this is kind of an emotional invisibility that you experience growing up, especially when it's air dominance. So there might be more of a focus on what you know, how you perform academically, your capacity to be good and perform the social norms of your family or your community. And there's less focus on how things are impacting you, the effect that you're having on others emotionally, and what that means about your entitlement to care, emotional protection, and the kind of emotional safety that allows you to pay attention to your own needs without having to sacrifice attention or connection from your caregivers. And I'm saying all of this within the context of there are things happening in your chart right now that are really making you focus on not what you can achieve as sidereal Aries rising, not what you feel personally responsible for, not what you feel like you have the power to do, but how you feel in your body. This year, 42 for you, is about emotional safety, and it is about recognizing imbalances in caretaking dynamics going all the way back to childhood, and how your need to focus on the well being of your child requires you to receive care that maybe you have not felt entitled to receiving from other people in the past. I've actually got your solar return chart pulled up, and this chart is chock full of Scorpio and Cancer placements. When we have these solar return charts or transits that bring the signs we're missing, it can feel like we are fish out of water. What this is going to mean for you is that you are going to have much less tolerance for emotional distress, much less tolerance for physical pain than you have ever had in your life. Things that you may have dissociated from with the curiosity of prioritizing other people's opinions or concealing to maintain your composure, or even taking responsibility for because you just don't believe that anyone is coming. It is going to be harder and harder and harder for you to suppress what it is that you're feeling. Now, what does this all have to do with career? Well, I think that even the fact that you're asking this question is rooted in your pre mother identity. And your pre mother identity as sidereal Aries rising is very ambitious, it has goals, and your talents and your gifts that you have cultivated or may have been born with are so important for you to show and prove, like, yes, I'm doing it. Look at what I can do. It's so great that I get to do this thing. But that is not what time it is in your life. It is time for you to learn from your baby. See, when you have a lot of sidereal Gemini placements like you do in your chart, it's almost like the solution to every problem is words, a conversation, knowing more, or finding better words to communicate your point. It often seems like what is the source of conflict is always communication. And so, if you could just communicate better with more knowledge, more understanding, maybe even more empathy, then the thing that you need or the goal that you're trying to reach will happen for you. But this sky, this new motherhood, and the way that these transits are impacting your chart are saying, hey, you may have never experienced emotional protection. You may have never felt like you had the right to feel what you feel, when you feel, as a matter of emotional safety and survival. You may have always had to choose connection over emotional authenticity. But this year says no more of that. So, as you are making decisions in your career and what path, you need to think about how these issues are motivating why you're even asking this question and the choice that you ultimately make. I think at the end of the day, this year is really saying, like, hey, this is the time that you learn to take up emotional space, and you're going to take some cues from your baby. Your baby can't talk. Your baby is completely helpless. Your baby is relying on you to watch their patterns and to discern and translate their sounds and nonverbal cues and figure out what they mean and alleviate their distress. When you don't have any water in your chart, that didn't happen for you. Nobody was like sitting around waiting and paying such close attention to you that they learned your emotional patterns. They anticipated your needs. They fussed over you and prioritized your comfort. That's not what happened for you. But I bet you that's what you're doing for your baby right now. And so, how are you taking cues from that baby as a means to taking up more and more emotional space, not just to achieve things in the outer world, but to create the safety in your body that you need to show up for your kid? If you would like to be the recipient of advice from the People's Oracle, go on down to that description box, click the link, fill out the form, and maybe next week I will be giving you advice. All right, I'm back with my tarot cards, and we are going to pull a few tarot cards because I want to know. What wisdom, what insight, what guidance can we carry with us as we move through this full moon, as we, embark upon this new series of eclipses? And what are beneficial perspectives to take? What is a beneficial way to perceive, interpret, and understand what is going on for us individually and collectively at this full moon in Sidereal Capricorn, where we are realizing the tension between being between caretaking and being taken care of. All right, we've got the 3 of Cups on the bottom. This is our context. The 3 of Cups is about bonding, it is about connection, it is about sharing in an emotional sense. There's this sense of, I see you feeling me, and I feel you seeing me. I'm feeling you, you're feeling me. By feeling, I mean, I am witnessing the effect that my experience emotionally is having on you. And I am allowing you to have an effect on me. I'm allowing your inner emotional world, your joy, your grief, your distress, your happiness. I'm allowing all of that to affect me as you are allowing all of that in me to affect you. When I say revolution begins in the body, I mean allowing yourself to be affected, not just so you can get on the internet and scream about it, but in a way that changes the way that you move in relationship to other people. All right, let's see what we've got here. We've got the 2 of Swords and we've got the 7 of Wands. Ooh, sometimes when I pull these cards, I just get like a complete, like, this is what you should say. And that's what I just got in this moment. The 2 of Swords and 7 of Wands is really about protecting ourselves from propaganda. And this propaganda is trying to tell you how to interpret what you feel. This propaganda is trying to tell you how to interpret what you experience on an emotional level, particularly with Saturn in sidereal Pisces being very strongly configured at this time. Suspicion is the primary emotion that's kind of floating around the collective. And that suspicion says, I cannot trust that people and things are what they appear to be. And there are a lot of reasons why you or I might not trust that people and things are what they appear to be. First of all, is generative AI filling up our timelines and our screens, our billboards, our murals with stolen intellectual property, filling up our music streaming platforms with stolen intellectual property that maybe we don't realize isn't human until some time later. On top of the fact that our government is explicitly using generative AI to manipulate the public. The function of sidereal Pisces and that coping strategy of suspicion, mind you, this is where Saturn is, and Saturn is in charge of this full moon. It is to protect you from lies. The inner sense of feeling that you cannot trust that something is exactly what it appears to be is the start of intuition. Skepticism and suspicion is one of the many tools in our toolkit of discernment. But this is the one that we need to pick up and use to protect ourselves. The Seven of Wands is saying, if it's coming after the six is overcoming something. And the Seven of Wands is preserving that position. It's standing ground and saying, I may not be able to make more progress in this thing, but the least that I can do is protect how far I've come. The Two of Swords is often this card of withholding judgment. And I think under this sky, part of the reason why we need to withhold judgment is that there are a lot of influences trying to judge things for us. On the previous episode, I talked about Jacob Ward, who is an Instagram account I follow a lot. He also has, I think, a Substack or a website called The Rip Current. And he talked about how we are collectively handing over our judgment forming to AI. Many people have become so dependent on their chatbots that they can't make decisions without handing over their judgment to AI, without asking or prompting Chat GPT. In this world and in this time where we are overwhelmed with content, where we are overwhelmed with so many people's opinions and hot takes, when we are overwhelmed by a news media that is constantly trying to tell us that we did not see what we saw and we should not feel what we feel about it, it can be so incredibly tempting to revert to a childlike posture where someone else is making all of the decisions for you. I don't blame people. It's a lot to make sense of, particularly in a time where we don't have trustworthy religious clergy, when our academic institutions have been subject to a fascist takeover, where we can't even trust that the professors who are teaching us aren't even using AI, using generative AI and chat GPT to create their resources and their curriculum to grade our papers, right? In absence of a network of authorities who are trustworthy enough, of humans who are trustworthy enough to help us make sense of things, is exactly the type of vacuum where fascist propaganda, in the guise of computer robots, also called generative AI and chat GPT, can fill in. Right? So we really, at this full moon, as we are witnessing and experiencing destruction, as we are in the midst of collapse, it is so importantly that we withhold forming judgments, that we hold off on accepting that what we hear is the truth, that what we see is exactly what it looks like. And the Seven of Wands is speaking to the way we need to protect this right to be skeptical. You have a right to be skeptical, but just know there are many content creators who are taking advantage of your skepticism and giving you a very tantalizing explanation for what you're seeing. What are the characteristics and values of a person who has earned the right to help you form judgments? How does a person, an institution, or an organization prove to you that, yes, I am someone you should listen to? When you are feeling skeptical and suspicious, I am the one you should let connect the dots for you. Well, this full moon is kind of giving us the answer. Realizing the tension between caretaking and being taken care of. Is the person or institution that you're handing over your capacity to form judgments to someone that is siphoning off your caretaking, or is it reciprocal? Are you receiving care in return? Are your material conditions changing? Are you being empowered to uproot and overturn the forces that keep unequal dynamics of caretaking taking rooted as the status quo? These are the questions we need to ask. Cancer always is trying to say you have permission to center your own needs. You have permission to pay attention to what affects you physically and emotionally. You have permission to embody the entitlement to care. See, what a lot of people who think of themselves as progressive or leftist, myself included, often get caught in is this idea that only billionaires and CEOs and people like Donald Trump and Elon Musk and whoever else, only those people are entitled. And I don't ever want to be like those entitled people. I'm here to tell you that they are 100% depending on you to feel disgust at the thought of being taken care of and having your needs met and embodying an entitlement to that thing. They are banking on you placing a moral value on the entitlement to be taken care of. And the more that you perceive that entitlement as a moral failing, the more of your water and your electricity and your clean air and your uncontaminated soil they are going to scoop up and take for themselves. When I say revolution begins in the body, I mean there will be no revolution without you embodying an entitlement to be taken care of. Because otherwise, everybody else who does are going to be the ones getting their needs met. On the flip side of that, when we talk about sidereal Capricorn and rationing, it is often placed as a burden on working people. Working people should be the one that ration. Working people should be the ones who are expected to do more with less. Working people are the ones who should drink out of paper straws. Working people should be the ones who, don't take trips, don't travel. Working people should be the ones to eat cans of beans rather than enjoy a variety of delicious and fresh food. And again, because we don't embody an entitlement to being taken care of, because we negatively judge that in a moral way, we say, yes, everybody's going to have to tighten up around here. We're going to have to get a bit austere. You're going to have to do less with more. You're not going to have any gasoline and you're not going to have any access to healthy, clean food. And sorry, you got to drink less water today. And no, you can't have. And no. And you're like, yes, you're right. Everybody, let's do it. Let's do it for the environment. Let's do more with less. No, wrong. Not, nope, nope. You already doing more with less. You don't even have health care that allows you to get pregnant and have a baby without that hospital sending you a bill for thousands of dollars. God forbid you get sick with the latest diarrhea causing bug that's contaminating our food. You can't afford the bill the hospital is going to send to you after you boo booed all your insides out. You're avoiding going to the hospital now because you don't have the money to pay for it. You're already doing more with less. You're already surviving on the bare minimum. You're already rationing. Health insurance costs have exploded. The cost of groceries has exploded. And you think the revolution is you tightening your belt and only eating beans? That's what you think the revolution is? No, the revolution is realizing that the more that you are entitled to is in the pockets of Donald Trump. It's in the pockets of Lockheed Martin. It's in the pockets of Elon Musk and Larry Ellison. It's in the pockets of the CEOs who are running the studios in Hollywood. It is in the pockets of the presidents and vice presidents of the record industries that ate up all of the smaller labels. It is in the pockets of the CEOs of the grocery stores who keep raising the prices on the food. The more that you are entitled to, somebody else already has it. And the solution is not for you to do more with less. The solution is for you to go take it. That's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Divination for Liberation podcast. I am your host, Dana Lynn Knuckles, also known as the People's Oracle. As always, this is where we do our COVID update. We have a few hot spots. Overall, the United States is still at an all-time low, only comparable to the beginning of the pandemic when everyone was staying at home and masking outdoors. If you live in Southwest Louisiana or Southeast Texas, you are experiencing a COVID surge. If you live in Houston, Lake Charles, all of those areas, Galveston, you should probably be masking in all indoor spaces because there absolutely is a surge in that small part. The link, pmc19.com, is going to be in the description. There you can go and you can check and see, is there excessive levels of COVID in the wastewater in your locale where you live or where you are going to be visiting? Next time when you see me, it will be eclipse season. If you are not a member of the Divination for Liberation community, you want to join. I will probably be going live on Zoom just for paying community members twice over the next month. One, we will be talking about eclipses. What even is an eclipse? Why should we be paying attention to? And what does this new series of eclipses have to bring for us over these next 18 to 24 months when it will be occurring? And then the other Zoom I'm going to be doing for paying members of the Divination for Liberation community will be a live talking about Venus retrograde. Uh, by the time I publish the next episode of the podcast, Venus will already be in the sign where it will station direct in November. The Venus retrograde this year is in Sidereal Virgo and Sidereal Libra. And if you are under the sound of my voice right now, neither you nor anyone else you know has ever been alive during a Venus retrograde where Venus went back into Virgo. It's been a couple hundred years since that happened. And we're going to talk about what all of that means soon. Join the Divination for Liberation community. It supports this podcast. You get access to stuff like that. And I'll drop dates and Zoom links for those two lives soon. In the meantime, in between time, I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope that you don't have the boo-boo bug and that you're doing all right. Times are hard. It's trying times. I personally had to really pull myself together to come and record this episode today. And so I appreciate all of you listening and watching and continuing to support this work so that I can continue to show up for you. Bye.